This is Koen. So I've been teaching for 20 years in Belgium. So we have a population of 11 million, which is important to know, quite the same as Sweden, Portugal, and Greece. And in Belgium, most people do have an internet connection and computer. And what's interesting to see is that we are now in lockdown for 5 weeks. And during the first 2 weeks, the government organized that an NGO called Close the Gap assembled like 20,000 laptops, and those were given to the students who don't have access to technology. And the main internet provider in Belgium, they made internet access for free. So we are basically in a good spot here. So my stance in this debate is more like how to use technology in case you have access to it, which may not be a fair point, but still. So what's interesting to see is that the government tried to make sure that everybody has technology, but there's still a blind spot here because a lot of teachers don't know how to use the technology. And what they start to do is they use the tool as a starting point and not the pedagogy and the content anymore. So I teach in two different schools, and they both had a very different approach. One of the schools is the teacher training department in which I teach. So they locked the school before even the government locked the schools, closed the schools. And what they did is that every teacher had to replace the classes at school by distance learning and synchronous distance learning, so using Zoom. Another school in which I have been teaching for 20 years, in that school, we have been doing distance learning for 15 years with only the web design department. And that school didn't even allow me to teach remotely during the lockdown. So they both took care of this situation very differently. Now, distance learning is not that buzzword anymore. You know, it's everybody's speaking about it, and it may replace the classroom, but not the teacher. And what's happening right now is that teachers, even they don't really know how to use the technology, but in case they do, they only focus on the tool itself, like Zoom. I'm going to teach using Zoom because everybody is doing it. And now I need to know how to do it. So I'm trying to fetch a manual, and I start to teach my students. But that's basically a very wrong way to deal with this. So a few thoughts on this. I think that we need to focus firstly on synchronous and asynchronous learning. Sometimes we need those live interactions. And sometimes the asynchronous, like the video classes you give to your students, they allow the students to learn on their own pace and learn on demand. And I think that different ages and subjects in schools require a different approach as well. There's no holy grail. We really need a nuance in this. Like, for instance, like when you teach in secondary education, you may teach using Zoom live literacy or something like that. But in primary education, it may not make sense to teach live. But what may make sense is that just the teacher has a very informal moment with the students because they need their teacher. They need to see those teachers and have an interaction with them. And learning how to write the letter K doesn't make any sense on a distance, you know. Also, there's a very huge debate about the type of education we prefer in our country. Like, there is a very knowledge-based approach in the UK and other countries, while there is more like a skills-based and project-based and problem-solving approach in India and Canada, etc. But when we speak about distance learning, we try to use technology, and all of a sudden it's all about knowledge. You know, it's not anymore about problem solving and skills based. That's not the issue anymore. Everybody is speaking about we have to deliver content, and that's an issue as well. And I noticed Christian Williams's remark in the chat, and he claimed that he tackled that stance about online learning and content delivery, and that it's important to make a distinction between online learning and content delivery. And it's really that he's really right about that part. But what I think is that what's really crucial, and there's been a lot of research about this part, is that we need to activate our students. We need to make sure that they understand what they are learning, that they are actually learning, using quizzes, etc. But also sending out a survey like, how do you feel about this? Do you prefer this kind of learning, etc.? And I think that a school needs to decide on the tools they will use as well, not like bombing students with 10 or 100 different tools, because it's, yeah, a lot of teachers, they know a lot of tools and they try to use them all together, you know. It's just like you have to make that wise decision, like this subject is to be taught on a distance, synchronous or asynchronous. And when we are going to teach synchronous, we are going to use like Zoom. And in case we're going to teach asynchronous, we create small videos which we send to the students. It's quite easy as that. And so my point has been about teachers who have access to technology, but I've been doing work with refugees as well in the Kakuma refugee camp. And it was a real struggle over there. I heard some bad things about poor students today, but they really have nothing, not even a pen. So it was really a challenge to teach them with internet connection, with Skype. And so we noticed that there is technology which makes internet available offline, like the Rachel device, which is quite inexpensive. It's based on Raspberry Pi. And it makes like Wikipedia, TED, Khan Academy, a lot of books available offline. So you have to focus on those kind of technology as well. So, and then Marge's Ring of Hope. What we have been doing is like launching global projects as well, focusing on empathy, making sure that everybody is happy. We did with Alex the Plant Ad. We asked students to tackle climate change and plant trees globally. So I think that having technology and a little bit of internet connection allows us to make learning global as well. So all of a sudden we can have interactions between students from Malawi, Australia, Canada, and so many different countries. And it's not always about knowledge. It's also about sharing empathy and other skills, and just focusing on other stuff sometimes.
Koen, speak a little bit more about that project, please.
Yeah. So what we did is like in 2017, I launched the Climate Action Project, and right now, every year in October, we have like 100,000 students from 98 different countries, and they all focus on one single subject, which is climate. And climate change is very different in different countries. And what we don't want is that the teacher make sure that the students are learning the definition of climate change by heart, you know. That's not what we want to do. And then assess, no, what we want is a student-centered approach in which the students are able to share what they think and believe about climate change. And then magic happens, basically. They're all able to share what they think. Some create videos, some take pictures, drawings, and this led to real solutions, like students in America with Brian. They created a solar suitcase which brought free electricity to African schools, you know. And we had Andrews, they planted 60 million trees with presidential support in Malawi. So a lot of real cool stuff happened just by sharing thoughts and a lot of things on one simple website, basically.